donors, partners, supporters, past award winners, and valued volunteers. Welcome to the annual meeting of Preservation Awards of Historic Annapolis. Historic Annapolis is celebrating 73 years of preservation, education, and advocacy. To ensure the legacy of Annapolis for future generations. It is now my most gracious and distinct pleasure to introduce the West Annapolis Elementary School Chorus. God bless America!
All right, thank you. Well, between the town crier and the West Annapolis course, what a tough act to follow. Huh? They were great, weren't they? Thank you, guys. I'm Jim O'Hare. I'm the chairman of the board of Historic Annapolis. I'd like to welcome everyone to our 2025 annual meeting and our preservation awards. We'd like to offer special welcome to several VIPs who are here tonight. We have Manny Welsh from the Governor Moore's office. He's the Principal Deputy Chief of Staff. Secretary Chandri from the Department of General Services, DGS. DGS is and continues to be a great partner to HA, so Secretary, thanks for joining us. We have Kira Mahoney from Representative Sarah Elfreth's office here. State Delegate Dylan Baylor. Wendy O'Sullivan, Superintendent of the National Park Service Chesapeake Gateways Program. Thank you, Wendy, for joining us. We're also very pleased to welcome Annapolis Mayor-elect Jared Littman. I must say, after having the mayor of Annapolis not join this meeting for several years, it really does feel great to have Jared here. So, Jared, thanks for joining us. Thank you. I believe that we have Harry Hunley. Is he here? Not here yet. Well, let's give him a round of applause. I'll tell him we got a big round of applause. We do have Alderwoman O'Neill from Ward 2 and Alderwoman-elect Conti from Ward 6. Sir, thank you for joining. Well, just a quick notice. We also have, just as evidence that HA knows no political bounds, Bob O'Shea is here. So hey, thank you. Thank you, Bob, for joining us. I'd like to start by recognizing all of our HA board members and board emeriti. If you could all stand as board members, please stand. Thank you all. Thank you all. And a special thanks to Ann Covington, who in 6 weeks is going to succeed me as chair. So thank you, Ann. HA is a small organization. We have an annual budget of about $3 million. We have a full-time staff of just 15 people. We're able to perform way beyond those relatively small numbers because of the dedication of our staff, our part-time employees, and our volunteers who work so hard to support HA and our cause. I'd like to have the HA staff and volunteers please stand to be recognized. Thank you all for your hard work. And before introducing our president and CEO, Karen Brown, I'd like to share some background about Karen's tenure. Karen started in 2022 in the shadow of the pandemic, which was a very challenging time for HA. Our state funding had been cut by 10%. We had limited cash on hand. We had been operating with a structural deficit that was depleting cash, and our line of credit was almost exhausted. With all of that, and also our inability to pay a full salary during her first year, we offered Karen the job of president and CEO. To our surprise, she said yes. Over the next 3 years, Karen has led efforts to right-size our expenses, increase state funding, improve our development efforts, and as a result of those efforts, we've had 3 years in a row of operating cash surplus. Our line of credit has been paid down to zero, and we have significant cash reserves on hand. So, in addition to our financial successes at HA, Karen has also served as the public face of preservation in Annapolis and for protection of our historic waterfront, often taking on powerful political foes when others would not. The only thing that Karen has not done, which the board has asked her to do, is to take more time off. It's been my pleasure to work with her, and now I leave you in her very capable hands. Thank you.
All right, so for the record, Jim went way off script. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here this evening. I am so deeply honored to have such a packed house, and I'm deeply honored to be the president and CEO of Historic Annapolis. I want to give another shout out to Ms. Hoover and the West Annapolis Elementary School kids. I thought they did a fabulous job. So many of us have had the great fortune to have had teachers that have really touched our lives. And for my three boys, that teacher was Miss Hoover at West Annapolis. And a great memory of our time at that school was the chorale group singing Hamilton. And we thought it was really relevant. It's the 10-year anniversary and still seeming very relevant. We asked her to come, but it also demonstrates this incredible partnership, the growing partnership with Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So was really excited that that went as well as it did. This is such an exciting time, an important time for our community and for historic Annapolis, and you are an important part of both. So you all know our tagline: preserve, protect, connect. We connect people with our heritage and we connect with our community. And through our work, we protect the quality of life that comes with being surrounded by authentic history and ensure that it endures for generations to come. So there are many reasons that historic preservation is good for Annapolis, whether it's socially or environmentally or culturally. But at HA, we're especially interested in understanding how historic preservation can be a catalyst for economic development and for heritage tourism. And so tonight we are greatly honored to have our keynote speaker, the preeminent industry leader on economics and historic preservation, Mr. Donovan Yofema. Don is the principal and CEO of Place Economics, which is a Washington, D.C. based real estate and economic development consulting firm. You can see his full bio on the back of your program. He is nationally recognized and widely respected as a thought leader in the nexus between historic preservation and economic development. He is also a distinguished recipient of the National Trust for Historic Preservation's highest honor, the Louise DuPont Crown and Shield Award. So it's been a few years since Don has been to Annapolis, and we thought it would be nice to have him come back and share some best practices and some lessons learned and a couple words of inspiration. So I wanted to further my introduction with him with one of my favorite quotes, which is by Don, which is, "By protecting our historic resources, we are honoring the investments of our grandparents. But at the same time, we are helping create a healthy economy for our grandchildren." Please join me in welcoming Don Rivkin.
Thanks, Karen. I don't think I ever said that. I think you made that up. I'll take credit for some. Thank you all for being here. I'm thrilled to be here because I know that Historic Annapolis is such a great organization. Yes, I might not be as smart as the machinery. So here's my favorite quotation, and that is from a American playwright and director. "If you can't write your idea on the back of my business card, you don't have a clear idea." Well, so here's the back of my business card. Can you just click that? I'm sorry. Historic preservation is the one strategy that is simultaneously exercise of economic, environmental, and social responsibility. So I'm going to spend a few minutes tonight just talking about why that's true. We'll just somehow listen to so. Okay. So our firm, Karen said it, our firm is Place Economics, and we do half of our work is quantitative analysis, and we do mostly city level studies around the country, and that's what the factoids you're going to hear from me are mostly from our studies. Next one, please. at- okay. But I did go through our kind of menu of services, and what's happened over the years, we kind of expanded from beyond the narrowly economic to social justice issues, environmental issues, demographic distribution in historic districts, and so we've kind of expanded. And I'm going to share all of those with you. Next one. Sorry. So first with the economic. The next one. So we just finished a study in Philadelphia, and of course, those who are acquainted with historic preservation and economics will say, well, the natural piece is the jobs, because historic preservation is very labor intensive, and that has been a major impact on the local economy. Well, over the last decade in Philadelphia, annually, there's been 2,500 jobs every year, year after year after year in Philadelphia, just from the tax credit projects that have been done in Philadelphia. That's $141 million worth of Philadelphia paychecks, let alone what went elsewhere. And importantly, particularly for you newly electeds, $8 million every year to the Treasury in the city of Philadelphia just from those historic preservation projects. So the big one is a big connection of the labor intensity of historic preservation. But it's not the only way that we look at the economic side. So he did a study in New York City. And you can love New York, you hate New York, but nobody can argue that it's not one of the most creative cities in the world. Well, historic districts in Manhattan have about 12.5% of all the jobs, but 23% of the jobs in the creative class have chosen to be in those historic districts. Then in LA, we looked at it a little different. Again, the West Coast version of the most creative city in America. And while there was a 20% growth in arts-related jobs in the city over the 15 years or whatever we looked at, it was almost double that in historic districts. People choosing to be there in these kind of cutting-edge categories of workers. And then this two issues, and they're absolutely fundamentally economic, and that is of civic identity and civic differentiation. And the way I think of them, it's civic identity is kind of how people think of their own city. Community differentiation is how you market yourself to the rest of the world. So we did some work in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, a year ago, and here is a great little sign in just a store in downtown, of finding identity through heritage. Now they read kind of that recognition, and then a great Nobel economist. Nobel Prize-winning economist, over the long term, places with strong distinctive identities are more likely to prosper than ones without them. Every place must identify its strongest, most distinctive features and develop them, or run the risk of being all things to all persons and nothing special to any. Livability is not a middle-class luxury, it is an economic imperative. Well, that really talks about Annapolis, I suggest. And then, so there's some of the equity, but I want to talk about a couple of the social ones. Sometimes we add some citizen survey stuff when we do this kind of work. And we did some work in Portland, Maine, wonderful town, and broad survey. And we asked, why do you live here? Well, the top answer, so over 70% said it's the character and sense of place of Portland. Okay, great. And then in a different series of questions, we asked what the role of preservation was in Portland, and the surveys strongly agree, disagree, whatever. Well, so here was 70% said historic preservation maintains Portland's character and identity. That's the reason they lived there, and it was historic preservation that got the top answers for, in fact, preserving that. Then Palm Beach, Florida, very weird place if you haven't been there, but we did some work there, and we asked a series of things. How important is this to you? And so 2/3 said historic preservation very important, and another 27% somewhat important. You couldn't get the 90% of the people in Palm Beach, Florida, to agree the sun rises in the east, and yet that's what they're saying about historic preservation. And then we turned the question around and said, how would the loss of it reduce the quality? Even a higher percentage said it would be a significant loss if historic preservation was lost there. And then on the environmental side, and again, the reason I use those three is if you know the Sustainable Development Goals, it's economic responsibility, social responsibility, environmental responsibility, and historic preservation adds to those. So we did a study in LA. And we looked at it from an environmental standpoint, and we looked what it meant to tear down a modest-sized house, a little 2,000 square foot house. Well, what that meant was 300 cubic yards of crap that went to the landfill, and that's increasingly expensive in terms of both dollars and environmental quality. But the embodied energy that was in that building, we've now thrown away 900 million BTUs, and that's equivalent to 7,800 gallons of gasoline. And I want to take that one step further. 7,800 gallons of gasoline. 1 gallon of gasoline is environmental equivalent to 40 recycled aluminum cans. We all recycle our aluminum cans. But one small demolished building wipes out the environmental benefit of the last 300,000 aluminum cans that we've all saved. So it's a big component. Now, I'm going to give you a little expansion on St. Augustine, Florida, because I think there's just lots of similarities between Annapolis and St. Augustine. And a few years ago, we worked with, by the way, a former city preservation director, Lisa Craig, was also on this team. But we worked on the team helping them develop a resiliency plan, a heritage-based resiliency plan in St. Augustine. Now, we're mostly economic firm, and so we were charged in part with saying what's the pattern of property values in historic districts. Well, like we usually find out that the value increase over the long term of properties in historic districts outperformed the market as a whole. 7% of the land area, quarter of the population, 31% of residential properties, 34% of commercial properties, 41% of property values, 76% of St. Augustine's historic properties fall in the flood zone, by the way. But we looked at this, and the economic value of those historic buildings was just pennies over $1 billion. But keep that in mind, $1 billion worth of historic resources. Well, we're not a tourism expert firm. We don't claim to be, but sometimes when a client wants us, we look at tourism issues. And there's in St. Augustine, they have great tourism data. They do their own quarterly studies. And so we had great data to work for. And so there was about 29% that we called the core heritage visitors. Those were the people who said heritage was the specific reason they came to St. Augustine. Then there was another 25%, 26% who maybe came to play golf or lay on the beach, but they did heritage activities while they were in St. Augustine. So we call those our opportunity heritage visitors. So 55% of all visitors there were somehow heritage related. And we could use that number based on the survey to say how much they spent, overnight visitors, day visitors, how much they spent, how many jobs created, that, all those kind of numbers. But there's a thing called the travel cost method. And think of it this way. You decide to go to a Orioles baseball game. Well, the that experience is worth more to you than just the $100 the ticket cost. You took a day off work, you drove up there, you bought 2 beers and 3 hot dogs, whatever. So the value of that game was something more than that $100. And that's the travel cost method. And so we had all this data, how many visitors, how long they stayed, where they come from, what they spent while they were there. And the sum of those equals the value to those visitors of the heritage in St. Augustine. And we were able to convert that into numbers of people and dollars that will represent. But here's the big number. The value of that heritage, not the $1 billion that the buildings were worth as a piece of real estate, it was almost $3 billion that heritage was worth to St. Augustine. I'd speculate that a very similar thing would be true in Annapolis. And then Calgary in Western Canada. I think they're the first city in the world that ever did it, but they said, we have 4 commercial districts that have a concentration of heritage buildings. And we want a triple bottom line valuation, monetization. What's that worth in those 3 districts? And so we were responsible for the economic and the social side. Our architectural firm there was responsible for the environmental side. So on the economic value side, there was a base economic value of these buildings historic buildings in these districts. But there was also a heritage premium that, in fact, the marketplace was paying extra for these heritage buildings. And there was what we call the heritage halo effect, that non-heritage buildings that were close to, or proximate to the heritage, in fact, got about a 20% bump in value from the marketplace because of their proximity. So that was the kind of economic value. The environmental value, 10 million embodied carbon, 5 million embodied energy, 29 million in offset from, that didn't go to the landfill. And then we did, again, a survey stuff. It's called a willingness to pay survey. And so we said, how much would you be willing to give voluntarily, one-time a gift to preserve the character of these 4 historic, 4 commercial areas? Well, it ended up that 60% of the people said, I'd give something. And it averaged over the whole city, $60 a person in the city of Calgary to maintain the character, quality and character of those 4 districts. So when we started adding that up, you have, $400 million of base economic value plus the preservation premium, the base value of the non-heritage buildings plus the heritage. So this district wasn't worth $400 million; it was worth $900 million because of those extra compounded values in total. So there's plenty more that comes from. You can doze off in the next thing. Thanks very much for having me.
Nice. Thank you so much, Don. It's inspirational. And know that you have lots of friends in Annapolis. Come back and spend some more time with us. So now we're going to turn to our favorite part, one of our favorite parts of our annual gathering. It's the presentation of our Historic Annapolis Preservation Awards. Please join me in welcoming Rachel Robinson, Vice President of Preservation, who will be presenting 5 awards this evening.
Thank you, Karen, and good evening, everyone. Tonight, we honor those who have devoted their time and passion to the preservation of Annapolis and its history, and we recognize the restoration of an important landmark. First, we would like to acknowledge previous Preservation Award winners here with us, and I see Tim Leahy. Are there others in the room? Oh, yes. Freddie, good to see you as well. After I introduce each award winner, if the honoree will please come forward to accept the award, we will then take photographs of all awardees and their guests after the program concludes. If you can please stay up in this area. All right, the first one. We love recognizing worthy individuals who devote their lives to the preservation of history and culture. Tonight, we are pleased to also recognize those behind the restoration of a small but significant building in the capital city of Annapolis. Located across the street on the State House grounds, the old Treasury, constructed between 1735 and 1737 by Patrick Cray, is the oldest surviving public building in Maryland. The Architecture in Annapolis Field Guide notes that even though it was purpose-built for specialized function, which was the security and dispensation of paper currency, its, quote, form and overall proportions are comparable to well-built hall parlor houses of the period, end quote. The first major period of alteration came in the 1850s when fashionable Greek Revival interior detailing was added. The state treasurer then occupied the structure for 50 years. This was followed by 20th century occupants, including the State Department of Education, the Anne Arundel County Superintendent, the Annapolis Chamber of Commerce, and the Maryland Department of Information. Then, following the last major rehabilitation of the building in 1949, it became the tour office of a young organization called Historic Annapolis. At one time during the early 1960s, the Maryland Historical Trust also had an office in the Old Treasury. This current restoration is part of the larger State of Maryland project managed by the Department of General Services to restore the State House exterior and grounds and to make the site more universally accessible. About the project, DGS Secretary Chaudhry shared with us, quote, "It's a privilege for our team to help bring new life to a landmark that has witnessed nearly 300 centuries of Maryland history. Reopening the Old Treasury will complement our broader effort to restore the State House grounds and invite a new generation of Marylanders to experience our shared history, bringing fresh energy and appreciation to a building long deserving of preservation and admiration," end quote. HA would like to acknowledge Mark Schneidman, DGS project manager, project architect Nezik Cohen Wilson Baker, with Larry Wilson and Rick Smith taking the lead, the Chrisman Construction Company, overseeing the work with Drew Brown, Lindsay Davis, and Molly Dean as project managers, Durable Construction, the Maryland Historical Trust, and many, many more. After sitting vacant for 50 years, the Old Treasury building, restored to its 18th century appearance, will once again be open to the public. The next chapter will include installation and interpretation by the State Commission on Artistic Property. We are pleased to have DGS Secretary Chaudhry with us here to accept the award on behalf of the state of Maryland and the project team. At the conclusion of the program, we invite all of those in the audience connected to the project to come up for a group photograph. The next award goes to a very dear HA colleague. We present the Excellence in Historical Interpretation Award to Nanetta Hall. A proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, Nanetta lives by their motto, service to all mankind. We are fortunate that her service led her to historic Annapolis, where she has been faithfully nurturing the next generation of young historians through storytelling at Mr. Peka's Garden, the Footprints after-school enrichment program, and through her inspiring portrayal of figures from local history at our HA sites, so that all visitors, especially our field trip students, discover diverse and undertold stories from the past. Following a 20-year military career, Nanetta completed her education while working for the government and then spent 8 years as a substitute teacher. Eventually, she discovered HA while looking for volunteer opportunities. According to Nanetta, she loves, quote, helping students and community members understand the stories of Annapolis are connected to all of us, and that by learning them, we preserve our shared heritage for future generations, end quote. An example of this meaningful work and a true highlight for Nanetta has been at the Museum of Historic Annapolis, portraying Dr. Faye Allen, the first Black woman to practice medicine in Anne Arundel County. Nanetta knew that she had to give this portrayal her all and was touched when Dr. Allen's son, Harris T. Allen Jr., told her that she did a wonderful job bringing his mother's legacy to life. In addition to her responsibilities as our education coordinator, Nanetta has been the driving force behind HA's proud annual participation in and sponsorship of the Annapolis Juneteenth Parade and celebration. Now, we cannot recognize Nanetta Hall without mentioning her sense of style. And tonight is no exception. Whatever the occasion, she is always dressed to perfection. Nanetta tells me that her parents made style a priority in her house. This carries over into the great deal of time, research, and attention she puts into her portrayals of figures from Annapolis history. Her passionate dedication to historical interpretation provides inspiration to all of us who are lucky to work with and know her. But she is a true gift to this community through her mission to explore and share a diversity of voices and experiences of past Annapolitans, including individuals who lived and labored at the Peka House, colonial African American women, civil rights leaders from the 20th century, and, at the request of Janice Hayes Williams and Bishop Craig Coates, Maryland's own Harriet Tubman on the June 15th festival float. Nanetta is retiring from Historic Annapolis at the end of this year, but fortunately, we will all still see her as a committed volunteer for our Footprints program and as a historic interpreter at our museums. Congratulations, Nanetta Hall. Next, our next victim, he might say, Mayor Richard Hillman is our next recipient, and we are pleased to present him with our Lifetime Achievement Award. A lot can be said about Dick Hillman, his public service, and many accomplishments, but even so, he encouraged me to make parts up. As a historian, I will not do that, and the truth is too interesting anyway. A son of Annapolis, Dick's memories of growing up here include sledding down the State House lawn and his monthly teenage entertainment, Dancing with the Girls at Cotillion, which was held at the Peka House during its Carville Hall days. My favorite of the memories he shared was that his bar mitzvah was celebrated at Carville Hall, and his mother believed it to have included the longest and most expensive lunch buffet in the hotel's history. Dick came by politics honestly, with his father, a longtime alderman who also served as mayor, and his mother, a nurse at Johns Hopkins, active in local politics. Growing up across the street from the State House in Randall Court, a young Dick occasionally studied in the galleries of the House of Delegates. Dick, who graduated from Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland School of Law, and served in the U.S. Army, comes by his association with historic Annapolis honestly as well. His father's law office was on the first floor of the Maryland Inn, which meant that anytime Sinclair Wright or Pringle Simmons went up to the bank or post office, they could peek in the window and blitz Noah Hillman with legal questions, or perhaps more accurately, directives. Much of the conversation would have included the Hillman Ordinance first establishing the Historic District Commission in 1967. It seems inevitable that Dick would become Squire Richard at the end of his legal and government career. He long ago made a pledge to Sinclair and Pringle that he would be a tour guide one day. And then about 15 years ago, he ran into Debbie Gosselin, founder of Watermark, who had been bugging him to lead tours in his retirement. This seemingly met with Lisa Hillman's support, as she had urged him to find something to do. All that was left was for Dick to stop working and put on the historical garb. While his talent also included amazing tours of the Naval Academy, when he retired as Squire Richard last December, Dick had chalked up 1,400 tours of the historic district. In addition to Dick's love for Lisa, family, greyhounds, and hiking, Annapolis is fortunate that his devotion to his hometown has included sharing the history, people, and places of Annapolis. Mr. Mayor. Our next recipient is another native Annapolitan who also danced the cotillion at Carville Hall. It is our pleasure to present the Annapolis History Award to Jane McWilliams, independent researcher, editor, writer, lecturer, and devotee of good source material and citations. Jane brings to her work as a local historian the perspective of growing up on the water, a critical aspect of the Annapolis experience. The water is how people got here in the first place, says Jane, and whether it's 1650 or 1950 or 2025, boating and sailing remain part of living here. Jane spent her childhood in Bay Ridge and skippered, unbeknownst to her father, her catboat to join other teenagers on Kent Island. Surviving those brave jaunts across the bay, she graduated from Annapolis High School and then Washington College with an English degree. Young Jane may not have had a choice in becoming a historian or having a long association with historic Annapolis. She was one of the young women, or minions, doing history bits and pieces for Sinclair Wright, who would call the family home late at night to request researched reports. With solemnity, Jane credits Mrs. Wright with saving Annapolis. This training in the trenches during HA's infancy may have preordained Jane for her life's work, her book, Annapolis, City on the Severn, A History. As she tells it, there were many, many books about the history of the capital city, but the Annapolis History Consortium decided this place needed a history book with source material and footnotes. Jane volunteered to write it, but told the consortium they had to help, which members did through important sidebars in the book. The result, according to Jane, is that it's a book about a community, but it's also a book by the community. Mary Angela Hardwick, HA's Vice President of Education and Interpretation, shared perhaps the highest compliment we can pay to Jane McWilliams. She's a historian's historian. And aren't we lucky? Jane may not realize the ways in which her book has influenced the telling of Annapolis history. For example, there is no museum of historic Annapolis without Jane's book, which we refer to as the textbook or the Bible of Annapolis history. City on the Severn was published in 2011, but we are honoring Jane tonight because her book has become integral to the learning and understanding of local history in less than 15 years. As a new Annapolitan 3 years ago, I spent time with my newly signed copy, soaking up Annapolis, historic Annapolis, and preservation history from Jane. No better teacher. Jane, we are so pleased to present this award to you, and we appreciate through your humility, your willingness to accept. Thank you, Jane. And last but certainly not least, we are pleased to present our Cultural Heritage Award to John Panelides. John is a well-known part of Annapolis's royal family, that of the former royal restaurant fame. Proud Greek Americans, I learned from the family memoir that this hybrid identity has double meaning: rich cultural heritage from Greece and excellent opportunities in the United States. John and his family exemplify both. He is the oldest of 6 children of Savas and Magdalena Pantelides. Father Sam immigrated from Cyprus, and Mother Margie was born in New York to Greek parents. Sam came to Annapolis to become owner of the Royal Restaurant located at 23 West Street, beginning a long family legacy and solidifying a local institution they operated for 31 years. The Panelides remember the Royal as a cultural, social, and political hub and a learning laboratory for the first generation Annapolitans. John and his siblings learned not only about the adult world, but the American way of doing things, and seeing the whole range of people in different lifestyles and how they interacted. The Royal was the first restaurant in Annapolis to voluntarily desegregate. A young Carol Hinson Jr., who I believe is here, respected businessman and HA trustee, was one of the first African Americans welcomed by the family to eat inside the restaurant. Not only did the Panelides children learn the restaurant business at a young age, they learned that education was the path to success. John went on to graduate with 2 degrees from the University of Maryland. Inspired by his own history teacher, NHA alumna Lamel Bowen, who I also believe is here, John was a teacher at Annapolis High School and developed the first class on Annapolis history. He later became a successful land use and zoning consultant. He likely honed his persuasion skills, helping Sinclair Wright and Pringle Simmons convince reluctant business owners on West Street that removing the neon signs would visually restore and improve the new historic district. He owes his love of politics to the elected officials and politicos who frequented the Royal. Politics is obviously genetic, as John's son, Mike, served as mayor of Annapolis. In addition to politics, cultural heritage flows through John's veins. He has continued his family's legacy in the community, notably through Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church, where the family has been active since its establishment, the annual Greek Festival, and through his co-founding of the online cultural preservation resource, the Annapolis Greek Heritage Project. With plans to expand the latter, John hopes the project will make history and culture relevant for kids today. HA's Mary Angela Hardwick can also attest that John's connections and stewardship of history contributed greatly to our opening of the Museum of Historic Annapolis. John Panelides has summarized the Royals' impact, and I dare say his family's, this way: hospitality, family, work ethic, love of education, history, and the arts, and respect for others. These traits and elements certainly made for a strong community leader and a cultural heritage champion. John Panelides. And one more round of applause for all of our award winners.
Awesome. Well done, Rachel. You really nailed it. And I think it's so fun that the through line was Sinclair Wright and Pringle Simmons. Just amazing. All right, so you know the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but we have a million things to say. So we put together a fun collection of images and videos that best capture our energy, our effort, and the power of people, partnerships, and programs. The theme this year is Beautiful People, Beautiful Places. I hope you like it. Isn't that fun? So many thanks to MH Media and Charles Cabusi, who helped us put that together. I thought they did a great job. So as you can see, we've been busy. Oh, and we've had a great year. We've hosted over 100 public programs. We've welcomed over 200,000 people to our sites. We've had lots of school trips and field trips. And in fact, our field trips have grown 20% this year. I asked the staff what they are most proud of this past year. And so here are the top 10 in no particular order. The Faces of Annapolis cover story, the billboard, Lafayette programming, Brewer Hill Cemetery tour, the mayoral and Ward 1 candidate forum, conversation with Abby Phillip, the Bryce House vault, the plant sale, Hogshead Living History programming, and a clean audit 11 years in a row. Way to go, Lucy. So this is a good time to recognize our extraordinary team. As Jim said, we've got about 15 full-time and 30 part-time staff. It's a lean but mighty crew. I also want to thank the many PECA, Hogshead, and Garden volunteers and docents, many of whom are here this evening. Without question, we could not do our work without this incredible, robust cadre of volunteers. And lastly, I want to be sure to thank the Board of Trustees, especially Jim O'Hare, who's been a phenomenal chairman of the board for the past 3 years, a great thought leader, and a terrific guide and partner. So the team here is really, really good. Here are some of our recent awards and recognitions that we earned this year. We are also energized by our growing partnerships, some local and some regional. We are part of a broader network of partner organizations who help us succeed, and we draw strength from our partners. Here's a snapshot of our finances from FY25. Our operating revenue is growing, and we're now at approximately about $3 million, so that feels really good. We receive significant funding from the state for the management of our state property, but know that every dollar of state support, we generate about $1.50 of additional revenue for operating. And we do that through you, through donations and sponsorships and memberships, through fundraising events and admissions, public programs, and tours. In addition to our operating funds, we secure a number of competitive grants for specific projects. And I wanted to do a shout out in particular. We're very proud to have secured a landmark semi-quincentennial grant from the National Park Service for the Bryce House restoration. It's awesome. So more than half of our expenses are invested in the people who power HA and carry out our mission. And other expenses relate to programs and preserving historic property. And then there are our capital needs. We manage an impressive portfolio of 13 buildings. This is 45,000 square feet of buildings and over 2 acres of green space. We keep these state properties alive and active through adaptive reuse, compatible, and continued use of these properties. And we are charged with making sure that these spaces are well maintained and available to the public for all to live with, to learn from, and to be inspired by, just as we are. We continue to affirm our role as advocates, and as City Dock redevelopment advances, HA continues to be committed to ensuring that historic scale and character is protected, scenic views are respected, and resiliency planning is prioritized. And we look very forward, as Jim mentioned earlier, to collaborating with the new city administration as we advance this crucial civic project. Together, I believe we can, It's deeply, deeply important. And I think together that we can be very successful in ensuring that our vulnerable historic core is protected and that resiliency is prioritized. 2025 has largely been a planning year for us in the anticipation of the milestone years ahead. First, we're advancing the One Martin project as an anchor to our historic campus, connecting the Bryce and Peka houses as a place for education, for community, for fellowship, and for fun. Our goal is hopefully to have it open this time next year. And this has been a huge effort, and we're really proud of the progress that we've made thus far. We are creating an engagement strategy to actively celebrate the nation's 250th birthday next year and our 75th birthday the following year. So I want to thank Chesapeake Crossroads. I think they're in the house for kicking us off this year. We're working in partnership with Maryland 250, Annapolis 250, and others, and we've got some wonderful things planned. I think 4th of July is going to be especially memorable this year, and we hope that you can join us. And we are charged with bringing the Bryce House into public service for its first time in its history and creating an interpretive experience that celebrates the craftsmanship along with the many voices and stories associated with the site. So tonight we have just a few announcements to share. First, as of this week, we have officially launched our brand new website. So be sure to take a look at it and let us know what you think. Second, as part of a broader 250 effort, we're giving a nod towards the past Young Peka Society, which some members that belong to that are here tonight. And we're going to be launching a new Young Friends group, building the next generation of community advocates and partners. So more to come as this takes shape. Third, I want to extend an invitation to everyone to spend some of your holidays with us. We have the Holiday Spirit Tours, the Colonial Yuletide Celebration, which is a wonderful annual tradition. And for the first time ever, we are hosting Santa in the Summer House. So I want to recognize briefly just a few of our friends that we lost this year whose memory will forever be tied to historic Annapolis: Jim Earl, David Earl, Nancy Avalone, and Tony Zecca. And we're grateful for their many, many contributions to HA over the years. So now I'd like to close with just a few thoughts about the true meaning of our work. We are living in a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence and virtual experiences. This reality reminds us of the enduring importance of historic Annapolis's work, real history, and authentic experiences that connect people to our shared heritage in a way that artificial and virtual worlds cannot. So let's take this place where we are right now, for instance, the Governor Calvert House. The first part of this building was built in 1728 on land once owned by Governor Charles Calvert. It's 297 years old. Over the years, it's gone through lots of change and admittedly modernized with additions. But let me remind you of its history. If you look to the right as you walked in and passed through the lobby, you might have noticed a window showing a brick hypocaust found in the 1980s in an archaeological dig by Historic Annapolis and others. It was used to heat Governor Calvert's orangery. The place was also once owned by Jonas Green II, grandson of the Jonas Green, and this place has seen it all, even a lightning strike and a fire. It's been a barracks, a printing office, and an apartment building, and for the past 40 years, it's been welcoming guests as a historic inn. So places like this and the Treasury building that we talked about earlier are tangible parts of Annapolis' history for nearly 300 years, and they provide a sense of permanence, stability, and connections that are meaningful and lasting and comforting. They represent our architectural memory and identity. These places are Annapolis. They are a part of our community, and they are a part of us. At Historic Annapolis, we're charged with caring for Annapolis' historic places and stories, either directly or indirectly, as champions and as stewards. They remind us of where we came from and should be preserved for future generations. So you've seen how hard we've worked this past year, and you've heard about our many successes, but our work and our success are only possible because of you. And in the season of gratitude, I'd like to express my deep gratitude to you for your membership, for your commitment to community, and for your continued support. And on behalf of my colleagues and the Board of Trustees, thank you so very much for your support and for all that you do for Historic Annapolis. And in the season of giving, speaking on behalf of my development team, you knew it was coming. We hope that you will consider us in your year-end giving, and many thanks to all of you who have already generously donated to HA this year. So this concludes the business portion of our annual meeting. Again, thank you so very much for being here, and please join us in the atrium for some music and merriment by Unified Jazz Ensemble. Have a great evening, everybody.